you're going through this, but you're also deep in the church, and the church is telling you that being gay is wrong and so forth. So you're struggling with that whole dichotomy at the time. How was that whole situation like?
Well, it was tough because if in their interpretation of the Bible, it was an abomination, and it's all in the interpretation because depending on which biblical scholar or who's doing the interpreting, those scriptures can mean different things. So it was a struggle for me because I was in a religious family. I was going to a Catholic school, going to church on Sunday, and people were, back then, this was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Kids didn't talk about that. Kids didn't come out. We didn't use the word fag that much, but it was used, and where people would call you a punk or a sissy, or fruity or that kind of thing. So you just kept it a secret, but in the place that you were supposed to find solace and redemption, there was no place for me as a kid. Now, I did not realize that as an adult. I can, now sort of figure it out and process it, but back then I couldn't. It was just, for me, a secret that I prayed that would go away.
Well, you get to high school and you start dating girls.
Mm-hmm.
Going to proms and so forth. Did you have sexual relationships with girls during this time?
Yes, I did. And my sexual relationships with girls did not turn me heterosexual.
So was your first voluntary sexual experience, was a man or a woman?
My first voluntary sexual experience was with a woman.
Okay. And did you know at that point that this is not what you're interested in?
Well, again, I tell you, like, your body reacts. If you talk to any expert, they'll tell you, any physician, they'll tell you your body reacts. And so I think, when you're a kid and you have all these hormones or whatever going off, and so you can have sex with anybody, right? Meaning a man or a woman, just because. And so, I started to figure out my preference as I grew into my adulthood. I realized that I was not deriving the same pleasure from having sex with a woman than with a man, or being sexually active with a woman or a man.
When did you start having relationships with men?
Not until college.
Okay. And that's where you
not
actually
until
able to
college.
Explore and so forth.
That's when I began to explore. I was in a dorm room, and there was a guy there who we, had a couple of drinks. He's kind of a loner. We would hang out and talk or whatever, and never even thinking about anything. And then one night, I think we hung out and went to a bar, and things progressed, and it was something that I felt shameful after that because I shouldn't be doing this, but I enjoyed the experience while it was happening.
Well, it wasn't until you were 30 years old that you actually told your mom.
That I told my mom, yeah.
Okay, I guess you were going through like a heartache situation.
I had broken up with my boyfriend. I moved to New York. I'd broken up with my boyfriend, and he lived together for a while, and I was heartbroken. It was my first heartbreak. And, besides, childhood crush, I had a crush, I had girlfriends in elementary and whatever. And, yeah, I was heartbroken.
So you tell your mom.
Yeah.
I'm gay.
Yeah.
And how does she react?
She was quiet. I told her on the phone. I started crying. She was asking me, she's like, what is going on with you? Why you're not the son that, you're not the Don that I'm used to talking to. What is going on with you? And because I was really depressed and sad. And she said, well, what's going on with you? And I said, well, I'm really sad, Mom. And she said, why? And I said, because my relationship is over. And she said, your relationship with who? I said, my relationship with John. And she said, what kind of a relationship? And I said, well, he was my lover. And I started crying and bawling. And she was just really quiet. And she said, I had thought that, and people had, had said that, and there were rumors, and you had never talked to me about it. And, I didn't know that it was true. I guess she sort of wished that it wasn't true. And then she was like, she said, listen, baby, you're my child. I'm going to love you, no matter what. So she was really strong in that moment. And then months later,
What happened?
she kind of broke down, and she's like, I guess she was processing it, because I told her not to tell anybody, right? I'm like, Mom, do not tell. Like, let me tell.
Mm-hmm.
She called my dad. She's like, she called me back and said, look, I was telling your dad. And I'm like, Mom, I told you not to tell him. She goes, look, I don't care. I told your dad, and he said, this has been happening forever. And he said he knew already. And I was like, well, of course he did. He's, because my stepdad was a man of the world. He was 23 years my mom senior, I think. So, my dad knew. And then my sisters knew, but the confirmation really upset one of my sisters. And it was the exact opposite of what I thought. I thought the one sister would be more accepting, and the other one would be like, I can't believe this. But yeah.
I mean, how did it feel to finally let that out to your family?
It was a relief, and I was worried that back then that my family would judge me, or wouldn't love me, or would ostracize me, and my family meant everything to me then. So there are lots of stories, I'm sure, that you've heard about families who just sort of, cast their family member aside and ostracize them because they turned out to be gay or trans or whatever it is. And it's horrible. And that was my deepest fear. But I got to tell you, in that moment, and when my mom said she was okay and she loved me, nothing else really mattered in the world. I was fearless then. Nothing else. I wasn't afraid of anything after that.
Dope.
Yeah.
Dope.